No.
Let's go.
Boy, you're really concerned about it.
Now we're unmuted.
He was worried that it was his hair was.
Maybe my
I'll
college.
say it now that we're unmuted. David screwed up.
My college after they rescinded.
It's 4 viewers, it's fine.
Oh, nice.
4 viewers?
I have a cohort of over 50, so I look like a video.
I do not get.
Let me know when y'all are good.
Okay, just got me down.
I still don't have it.
Okay.
Oh, the allergies are gonna kill me. You're like last speaker, like cough every 30 seconds. I guess I'll count up.
Okay,
So just minus of beeping and annoying people.
Everyone good?
Wait, let me.
I haven't got it still.
Oh, you still haven't?
I just got it up. Sorry, I didn't mute my phone.
I haven't got it. Oh wait, let's see some jump. Wait, I'll leave it that now.
Yeah, no worries. Everyone else still good? Great. If veterans want protection, broad pyramid interest in national security, exemptions authorized the armed forces to triple water resources on a win now. CRS2, under political control statutes, extended the use of military subject to federal and environmental requirements, the section authorized the president to grant exemption returns to be in the permanent interest of national security interests of the U.S. may be exempt when you don't have president makes any part of the military to the interest of regulation 3 and double security law act. President makes an executive facility to be in the permanent interest of the U.S. Those exemptions will be increased in the cost of grand revolutions 19. Due to major source solution 2/3 of super unlicensed state for the list by the EBR military, the military shield from our series circle has accepted the in the great water with the final list of elections and rights to extend the military due to extension of exemptions to use right with the benefits of reasonable and the cost of extension of the military. The goal should be more environmentally sustainable. Scenario 1 is PFAS exemptions. All the military will leave PFAS chemicals and avoid cleanup and mitigation. PFAS 20 military pollution with overcome over for confirmed instances of contamination by PFAS near bases and high risk of PFAS contamination finding military training PFAS and municipal water collaborations and contaminated water supply chain EV internal loss duty regarding cleanup mitigation like cleanup financial compensation for military state of regulation final loss eligible federal exempt law that do avoid repercussions for pollution that causes extinction and fertility ICS 21 no the ability to reduce the long-term impact in the future the increase because of our internal weekend region and all 3 version of region take action now military PFAS pollution contaminates foreign safety all 21 first by contamination PFAS contaminated by irrigation water cows can be used for environmental control for contamination 100 military installation will action taken 6 and 8 installation will receive composable military time to clean up problems example of installation because of the food product PFAS and irrigation water food might be contaminated that friends of viability of use agriculture tree 20 PFAS are breakdown accumulated environmental squad and the description can the viability of farmers and maybe this people that will follow our experience property damage back environment for PFAS contamination PFAS and environmental cost country leader devastation for farms the US is key to international food trade domestic agriculture with global supply content the all 20 US supply national food exports subject to networks of agriculture regards disruption to US production of farming by 2 16% of soybeans and wheat and most substantial by agricultural stocks in the US that causes great power wars cast out 17 that includes food source in November around Russia China sales track and never food supplies will reduce stable secure countries with security done by the non-generating column decision to voice security supplies regional past 6 years changing the current military structure for exemption prevents PFAS pollution PFAS D20 after the military capitalized on its suffering evidence for PFAS contamination because of exemption should only allow exemption for extraordinary circumstances unlikely to be challenged within the existing regulatory structure. Scenario 2 is innovation environmental exemptions and military emissions reduction 19 covers the exemption for national security activities climate change demands a good environmental action for the military norms and military achievements of the military minimum size of the European nation exemption long-term baggage within the environment and the emissions remain for a long period of time and exemptions make sure we think this exemption closing exemptions is going to unlock military innovation that's all written in slide 14 military is going to be allowed to the environmental protection legal doctrine to reinforce that this government environmental laws unity laws to prevent the nation of accepting innovation energy efficiency and new technology make sure hard to between the military mission need to reduce development enables the military to competition global energy efficiency with the worst model increase the capacity of the military use mission military address competition to innovation every head military military for R&D supply tech innovation to eventually benefit the environment simply investment in demand and renewable energy US prime sea solid extension convols rivals concept political terrorism for entity Then it's constituted hardware background, everything on similar polarity and nuclear public catastrophe, centrality, military weapons, armored alliance, government, China versus Dayton, Johnny, Contested Global, trying to build a sort of version of nuclear original environment, nuclear official state counter, operational, mental force of technology, capable of reactive and capacity to differentiate American overreach, privacy, sustainable brand 18, argues on basis of our global representational challenge of organics, which is more difficult as represented the idea that privacy is faster from the truth by defensive news, energy, TVs, sound checks, more corporation, by visible use of war, by particle, multi releasing more extensive nuclear, massive advantage, air carriers, generation, air, nuclear, zero, legal, blocking, capital, flexible, sexual, value, analysis, and China version view, as, and for three, the global wealth, the global military spending, use, goods, and finding, try, or data maximum effectiveness, by B12. Do not place a chill virgin west protection policy class and fair fund policy policy magic culture when I do this and expect the paper and the word whatever starting get up reducing the result of term action by the US attorney national grounds of women water space into like every use and not contact one global overreaching global piece of the same various military innovations also global water wars veteran giant 17 military government turns the civilian benefits innovative water solution deal with the military and hang on her operation based on innovation with the water benefit people facing water using water space to have a solution bring screening sanitation parts release and ability for resolving water and resolve conflict with the future innovation bringing evidence about the team and has the duty of the research capacity for parents although should be enforced water system innovation efforts to water wars cause extinctions yet 20 simply water resources the news media global become the danger even guys from global powers arguments much water also security triggers and global water was updated the prior interval into use instability compensation the future water simply fell over the world judicial review of judiciary saturates executive right durability the military innovation the app preserves broad flags and investing green tech prevents flip flops and names national security light 17 just a global military the military block judicial reserve by the military environment complex less durable reducing energy and national security the more durable results judicial review aspects of policies on national security becomes paramount tax United States government should substantially increase its protection of water resources in the United States subject to exemption from protection on national security grounds or parenting grounds during peacetime if industry was deference environmental exemption to be broader 9 post-9/11 expansion of military power only judicial action conducted challenging unitary executive Babcock 7 organized terribly by the environmental constitutional tax of the armed forces powers of the military section for military criminal efforts efforts military judicial response to the war and terror military get the benefit of that implementation of the executive other decisions of the party military success of unitary executive held on the global congress of any deal check on the self-regulation of the worse of the history not much of the environmental laws language of the brown and make it more accessible for the predicament come to the congress and legislative will become permanently combined on the face of the broad standard no check the plan spills over the environmental constitution of the linchpin of expanding judicial powers of the executive narrative 9 growing judicial powers of the executive after 9/11 never loved the logics of the kids were states strong as their prior to address much of the difference effective environmental litigation more clearly than other fields of greater exemption in the environmental regulation increasing difference in environmental protection litigation particularly adversely was by default controlling environment and emergency exemptions authorities vital to resist domestic and international democratic backsliding treason 22 there's a sound of university that's why measure that by democracy university powers and the chemical energy was right to be for use of radiation the use of budget services of emergency powers find national use of doing the accountable legally not by democracy or by comfortable judges but wonderful legislators without democracy that really can help political movements recess suicide autocracy, the perfect legal national security just by average with average and defining the term the GS gets over the explanation their evolution of arcs and emergence of form where people and you the national security status which are protecting the nations of the entity and the country and employee contract those repression the measures of the words not connected to the security means it's actually even the presidency legislative laws that's emerging not continue to decline seriously re-emerging power comes the erosion use of democratic norms causes imminent global backsliding diamond 21 third reverse wave of democracy the trend continues to greatly democracy in Brazil India Mexico Holland Hungary Philippines Turkey Bangladesh Georgia Myanmar Elsewhere in Peru playback judges and passes the market dangers here the US could be the first against democracy to fail the fusion and no development more greatly in the backsliding of the champion, the defense director of the gathering backs of the U.S. example of influence the leaders of autocracies of American president to determine the fate of democracy in the world and expand authoritarianism causes great power. Diamond 19. Global budget democracy, logic has world war democracy, crucial for world peace and security in the world, which is where democracy goes bigger, pledge world aggression, Nazis in World War II extinction, or it's 18. Another future world in which this constructed region of the authority of the world would be very dark nationalist wars with risk of escalation, global nuclear colonization, multiple extinction, terminate some multiple rebels, and disasters, unfettered presidential power lacks any term value, but it directs allies and credit to enabling unchecked special ops. Brown 22. Reverse will to sometimes determine direction action of the leaders from times by weekend the Ukraine faces federal crisis because the bandits and able to make constructive policy direction of the only legitimate institution of violent machines and individuals turn up for the union and energy not using hardware by the leaders and misspoke in a variety of theaters whose nuclear and existential reject defense that's not specific to Biden means 21. Will is that closer to nuclear potential for with missile guidance that the work as we try to build a nuclear self Russia advertising themselves a little television around building nukes and nuclear religion roles of background nuclear assassin not putting no close all comes the Biden command the bill as the defense of the colossal the African all enemies made 7,000 number of the global list of duties areas and list communities US led sovereign and their reactor shows the right trying to group that we be stressed find over into the way of the plan establish the ground polish the establish a clear operable definition of security that's necessary and sufficient to solve the sign 18 national security virtual viewers have defined review cases of ability to build the national emergency government as a government version never of leverage to virtual that much running with national disasters or any occasional crisis be with the make sense condition massive should be that way that the boards all over reserve definition to shape the what constitutes the ability of the government to national security from reason like secretary of the control of the Congress contingent over that central acts of the authority of the national security with broad delegate by president to be to make the requisite find will only come to the results of president with interpreting the national security provision of cards the uncertainty how to address the challenges to prevent exercise of the national security protection is key not exclusive to the national security US Navy no date Navy given operating forces compatible with the national security defense and environmental protection not just to the mission to prevent pollution protecting the law do survival for except that need to set but don't solve the after billion force and only about a non-operational force is light 14 Camera struck the military meat concentration city levels and parts of the brand for concentration of its new garden military control water directed to the London British Energy and development new water law. Here's the brand for the DD now other response any parts of mechanisms managed now final military use of artificial energy while only the military use of energy parts of facility not government capacity of analysis of the energy have for 20 hours and available laser is it for energy conservation they're using for work and national security function 26. Okay, good.
Okay. What evidence indicates the app increases judicial review of like nuclear policy?
So we made a claim about increasing judicial review of what constitutes as national security and national emergency, meaning that would indicate other issues.
Like what issues?
So it's mainly a scenario about miscal and like I guess the market scenario too.
Sure.
But sorry, what was the question?
Like what other scenarios would the plan spill over to?
Oh yeah, so the Babcock and narrative evidence make the claim broadly. That's kind of the linchpin. But I think the Brown card is pretty good on this because it says that quote overreaching big legal authority, and then it says it gives examples of how like environmental pollution was becoming like national security in some countries, which proves that it's kind of a nexus.
It talks about raids by special operations to eliminate like the Islamic State, this line you highlighted. Would the app like get rid of those kinds of things?
Well, we think that they would be subject to new judicial restrictions.
Okay, so like special operations in other countries would be subject to new judicial restrictions.
Yes, although again, it's like about the definition of national emergency.
Yeah, okay, for sure, that makes sense. We'll take the rest of the crowd.
I could have done something about that.
He's everything else. That feels stupid.
Didn't I know?
I bet I can find it.
Yeah. Okay.
Hey, is it 8 or 10 at this room, by the way?
That's a good question. No idea.
Yeah. Sure.
Wait, what did we agree on?
8.
No, it's definitely not stated at the Southern Bell.
It was 10 at Pace, so I thought maybe.
It's 10 at what?
It was 10 at Pace.
Well, it's 10 most.
What?
Can we do 8 at pace?
We did 10 at pace.
Oh, we did?
Y'all wanna do 10?
Nah, I don't get it. If it's 8 at the prestigious Southern Bell, I'm sure MBA is consistent.
Well, obviously, at the advantage, we go at 8.
No, if you want that. Okay, order is 5 off, the protection advantage, the death penalty advantage.
Yeah, that's how I remember, because like, right, when you asked this time, it's nasty. It's almost every other bit. But this one, it stays.
Everyone got the Yep. Yeah. Okay, sweet. First Officer of Court Politics decided Justice Amy Cohen Barrett to recuse from Dobson Checks of Women's Health Organizations. Barrett's oath of office requires the recusal Sherry and Toma Dobson. Barrett should recuse herself. That is her only option to recuse if she does not. She is filing her oath of office based on politics. Robinson Marshall and narrow ruling that resorts the vast majority of abortions leading her. Antoine Robinson covered a narrow ruling would make up to 2 weeks cut off her. Narrow ruling would cause less than 2% of abortions to be illegal. This would not affect the majority of abortions. Why Robinson worries about the court standing upon his option appealing, but he could flip based on institutional capital. Biswick, not to such as to master 3D chess who anticipates all moves with and the intensity of Roberts, understood public regard is crucial to the court's Roberts, says that ideological interest on behalf of the institutional reputation of health image ACA. So it chose reveals some motivation to Roberts. His message remains no political positions, water protections, leftism forces Roberts to backtrack McRae and 16 Roberts service. Champion of the freedom of the property rights, liberty governance, and markets and environmental protection entails interventions into markets and property rights are challenging conservatives increasing partisan positions, water pollution opposes challenges to conservative faith in capitalism, pro-life policies cause global war, and anti-politicization of access to news leads to confident choice policy will have outreaching effects on global peace and U.S. influence investing in healthcare can reduce government conflict, placing social side agendas to maintain stability, reduce militarization, stop promulgation, and the whole great foreign policy for 7 years. U.S. is now in Congress with China's influence, anti-policy, stop power weakening, security next office, judicial review, dissent judicial review will collapse state secrets, documents, and the ability to respond to terrorism. Kroner, 19 disclosures will expose ministers, not divulging interest in securities and judges hold in their hands in the security and effectiveness of the most fragile intelligence programs and logical imperative of security is a zone of clouding authorities, legal notion must be flexible and recognize the vital security interests. Ranking approaches and courts of state secrets must be held on the list and has been jurisprudence to say what the law is and the corollary that each must interpret assigning to use of courts that the Supreme Court observed most of deterrence. Article 2 in diplomatic secrets against the coordinations organ has available intel that those reports have not been published. It would be intolerable of course reviews when the actions must held secret. Secretive counter investigations are the most effective counter tool. Kroner 18 NSA required 250 communications pursuant to 702. The motive with the Court of Intelligence against counterterrorism concluded 702 neither volume nor ubiquity diminished 702 collection over 106,000 most important mechanism, most critical security tool obtained for foreign terrorists despite the unmatched pedigree them qualified to support the legislative offerings would have impaired the collective signaling and torture the legislative military and tombs of global bears 19 nuclear spark full-scale nuclear wars and governments strike terrorist strongholds regions like conflicts to nuclear chain action or state nuclear competency that involve every new nuclear state would entomb the entire species atmosphere effects affect ecosystems reduce ozone render the entire planet hotspot. Next off is the advantage capital in the United States. Our government should increase the military's budget by $225 billion every time the military waves in. Environmental exemption on national security grants are paramount interest in increase military's budget for innovation of exports of new water scarcity combating technologies and sole authority no first use in launch or warning policies do not retaliate to cyber attacks eventually nuclearly and sanctions states do not comply with the rulings of the European and International Courts of Justice and subsidize those who do the counterfund constitutionally incentivize the military to waive exemptions. Media and 17 the power of the person gives Congress the power to allocate funding to implement military policy. Congress are on funding and appropriation bills. Congress can direct funding to express purpose or time frame the condition of funding on some benchmark being met. Reforming nuclear policy solves nuclear warfare in 20 blunder into a nuclear war guiding its sole authority and LOWs of dangerous with the false alarms of the cyber and unstable precedent sanction and subsidy secure state submission to international standards. Cambria and 17 the great power offers of payments such as equipment arms aid equipment arms that or supports power and wealthier the cost of sacrificing resources as small as a large gains or a small state. It should not be hard to define the compensation the utility for payments as large as power can be bought off on grants or concessions. Next off is the peacetime pick. The United States federal government should substantially increase the protection of water resources in the United States subject to exemptions from protection on national security grounds or paramount and just grounds. The plan codifies peace and war as additional 3 times or reifying militarism. Brookson 15 from rules of war times and peacetime rules for all times. We can advance this in an effort to end war that are not premised on sharp lines when war into peace of framing the war times is discreet undermines vigilance debates of all praises and meaningless war peace economies. Discourse spills over including war and militarism gay in negative peace refers to the absence of words in the role between the discourse analogous to the negative peace and perpetuous injustice of language can erupt in the balance of discourse requires a transformation of cultures oriented to balance of words and establish a linguistic positive peace are part of the struggle to reduce violence and non-violence discourse is to build lasting of peace and justice onto advantage one. The planned text is circumvented during peacetime. Is it possible to find Brookson 15? There's no such thing as peacetime in the war against terrorism. The countries are arbitrary advocates and inclined to dismiss authorities of actions between war and peace. Disingenuous government rhetoric is the wrong nature of modern threats and makes it impossible to draw the lines between war and peace. Institutions assume that we can distinguish war and peace. There's no way to do so. The wartime is only time that we have, or in the plan means one, not the other. That means the military will claim justifications on the other ground. Payton 16. The word or is used in exclusive disjunction, meaning of one or the other, but not both Harvard says endocrine disruptions, Montgomery and 21 extinction due to falling experiments to account as exaggerated. Harvard have found that research has been based on problematic problems that count varies a wide range of influence by genetic code. High count is not indicated in health or probability of conception. Idea the low counts that cause disrupting chemicals is not backed. All causes contain 21 PFAS and possible way textiles are saturated tape by wax. Use them for one proof there of ways to reduce our friction to PFAS everywhere. EPA doesn't regulate PFAS exemptions. No exemptions when you see post 20 the lack of regulation comes in the EPA not designating limits on the PFAS on the EPA not designating the PFAS as hazardous no food work sale and innate destructive team research and assumption policy actors predict the resource work on shoddy research words and efficient costly way to result confident research so food shortage are ubiquitous confidence rarely local government provides they will not escalate green military R&D is burgeoning grant entitlement despite U.S. increasing oil and gas and military pursuing alternative energy. The Army will establish a 25% zero installations of 2030. Navy will produce 25% of its energy from renewables. Biofuels have been used to aircraft and civilian the consumers already benefit. There's no water war impact low and 18 cooperation prevail over conflict unsupported by historical evidence of conflicts have been resolved in costing words hardly justified. Only one water wars ever happened. Larger trees can be evidence of a dangerous data sets of reveals out of 1,831 interactions. No events were war advantage to weak democratic leadership relaxes rivals now Ashford in 20. The U.S. has a somewhat a weak democracy. The reactions of worried about leadership not have BG and this would undermine democratic promotion. Trump delivered his gift to Putin. Democratic politics stagnates partisan abuse possible impact to image Trump is damage already turmoil make it harder to build a coalition against China preference. Wary of commitments to cooperation with the U.S. Trump and its countries commitment to not go with the work the paper read on TPP and impairs the victims of seesaw of foreign policy returning to no promotion consolidation resistance increase authoritarian alliance London 19 and Trump retained existing commitments to reach their countries the contest of orders exacerbating security restraining and expansionist impulses as timing balancing by China brand of Russia although divergent interests increasingly limited to the plot the more rules worry the power will undermine the effects level or the more they team up check the level power to reducing its fear there would be opportunities to divide and deter. They won't cause war now, but they would put Afghanistan and 19 China Indian fertility or contend not to challenge or respect to satisfaction. They have adopted free riding and willingness to genuinely contribute to explain representation in favor of the U.S. So the question is who gets involved in call for great powers. Rising powers are unwilling to pay unless they are full members. The U.S. has been unwilling to admit rising powers cut the card at rising powers. There's no accidental launch impact scale or 21 ICBM's responses does not equate to accidental launches. Sensors at price decision makers activities attack a current backstop of attentions making false alarms with possible assessors advise the president. The president can also witness attack to detonate. The president lacks certainty. Safeguards to me accidental launch impossible when the silos receive a message. They must be decoded to authenticate the target of ICBMs and lock in more nuclear misuse is a baseless alarmism. Delaware 21 ICBMs responses to sonically to accidental launch sensors of price decision makers and acts of the attack occur in the backstop of tensions making false alarm improbable assessors advise the president is also the way to attack to detonate. The president lacks certainty. The safeguards make accidental launch impossible when the silos have received a message. They must decode authentic.
Good.
Yeah.
Which part did you skip on case?
I skipped the brands card on advantage 2. I skipped the DoD card on advantage 1. And I skipped Mueller.
Okay, great. Status?
Conditional status quo is always a logical policy option.
Can you take claims from the bench time plan?
Nah.
Okay, great. I want to talk about the secrets this first article, or judicial review, as I call it. This first article is about visa courts and state secrets. What part of the app changes how visa courts operate?
You have read in 2 advantages that are based off of judicial review. Advantage 2 makes the claim that unitary executive allows things like the war against terror and uncheckable executive action that is bad. We have conceded the claim that the app spills over to challenging those things
we have
and said that judicial review means those things cannot be in secret because when the court reviews it, they need to see what the agencies are doing.
We have made a claim that we spill over to restrictions on the use of force. You made a claim that forcing disclosures in court is bad. When did we say we spill over, or what evidence in the one I see do you think said
the first card in the one I see? I think it's even the first words. Like they're highlighted. The war against terror talks about all the horrible things that
the app eliminates the use of force from the executive for the judicial branch to be able to check any actions by the executive. They have to know what the executive is doing.
And then you have read a card about info disclosure. Is the link just like maybe they won't be able to do counter terror and like that's probably good?
No. You've read a card. It's called the NORDAC card that says the app spills over to checking the unitary executive. We've said
that those things are allowing them to take action. They're doing it secretly now. The act would restrain them from doing it, require them to disclose that information in courts,
Okay.
which means
No,
their operations are no longer
I
secret.
get what you
They're
can
not.
see that. I don't think the contesting gets you there, but that's what debate's for. The peacetime kick, do you think the function of this is any different?
Yes.
Okay, what's the difference in function? Just, okay, go ahead.
It acts in all times besides peacetime. The 1AC includes a qualifier to when exemptions are applied. It says that subject to exemptions protection during peacetime, the counterclaim will
What's
get
the
rid of that
impact?
qualification.
What's the impact of militarism?
Of war, inequality,
Just like-
racism,
and the
structural
war.
violence.
Okay, great. And is there any external benefit to this, or is it just the internal?
It's internal.
Great. The advantage counter plan, this first plank, why does this, like, doesn't this do the opposite? Like, doesn't this clearly not solve the app? Like, why do you think the first plank solves?
It definitely solves the first advantage. I agree, it doesn't solve the second advantage. That's why we're impact turning the second advantage.
Okay, does any part of the advantage counter plan solve advantage two?
It solves the terminal impacts to nuclear misuse.
But not the internal to democracy.
Okay, but to be clear, you cannot kick any planks.
Yeah.
Okay, great. 8 minutes, starting now.
Stop track. 4:26. It'll be good for everyone. It'll be advantage 1, advantage 2. The word pick, the cap K, the advantage kind of plan, the secrets this ad, of course politics this ad.
Sorry, give me the other one more time.
Advantage 1, advantage 2, the pick, the K, the advantage kind of plan, the secrets this ad, the tactics. Okay, is anyone not ready? The point of the plan is that it redefines peacetime to any time that Congress doesn't declare war. The war doesn't apply to the plan. It applies to whether or not Congress is applying national security or paramount interest grounds to water protections. Yes, and for disruptions. Their party evidence doesn't have any warrants. Just says that basic principles go against the ICS evidence says that it decreases burn counts, which means that we can't reproduce. Yes, no, I'll call the evidence says that the most contamination occurs on military bases are negative evidence, which is the internal to add is specific to the military. The EDA doesn't need to regulate because it's just whether the military is yes, we work the test law that leads to population shifts, famine, social unrest, etc. Also, the nuclear war, the U.S. is key to ag has some evidence that empirically U.S. declines cause global supplies. Supply declines. The green tag doesn't matter. Isn't high enough now. The light evidence that the military is not producing enough of it to ensure readiness. Yes, water wars. Yes, had to impact the brand evidence. The brand evidence says that it holds applies that also turns democracy and it's key to revisionist countries. Yes, part of the veteran James evidence says that it's coming right now because of increased population. That leads to war because nuclear power stockpiles will fight over it. The democracy turn revenge their entire democracy scenarios did prove by the status quo. Democratic society now is why China and Russia are becoming closer, and Russia's invading Ukraine. Democracy making war 90% less likely to believe in my 20 democratic things we have a line IR. So that's for us. We apply not very much as a different analysis of everything as a positive correlation would regard the back and forth sometimes more between different guys than other guys relationship between parties and pieces 5 times more of us than means spoken on times of explaining why different means swallows was fine for confounders all already defined. If we're right that amongst the turns out the return state difference regions and alliances and different points are invisible erosion risk complete negative domination. We are for continues we may well which different point where among the goes and the arguments also are not nearly enough to tell us how close we are to that point to the left alternative to democracy ensure globally become stable motion. Winter trench in 417. No contest has a nuclear missile person tries to find the urban nation or government to make territorial gains and lines to be run and no going to state action on the gynecology that wasn't woman and if it's is the SES the SES ECS no go running nuclear development that democracy is a term of worldwide influence in Eastern the East China Sea, the South China Sea, the Himalayas, and Taiwan decisions will affect stability for decades. The word, unintended to the accident launches and return link. The yellow evidence is also about a being evidence which says that Biden will land Biden proceeds to other countries will lash out. The word pick, one perm do both solves the app and the net benefit. 2 perm the complaint must be intentionally and functions without anything else allows the negative to the entire the after kills. Education fairness 3 piece time to keep pick doesn't solve any advantage to the entire advantage about the specific term being a 4 word picks are about for finding some application with the app. The one seen favor still based on camera then from aggressive 5 and benefit plan text system. The last text between him fell from 95. Like flags renaming around the political change there trying to interpretation structure these are the they can rename take the form you commit sometimes better and this is random fell. The only ever make politics standardizing when there's whether actually rename cannot guarantee this is much more rapid displays of threat. After treating differently than they were reality dominate possess. Where we bring influencing discourse over the most strategy and sanitizing games of the fact that they all did not matter subjects became descriptive character instantly and rightly there are real limited why evidence of the renaming can accomplish no 7 endless forcing 19 has got us in the forever was 90 was a term to place over not something equal to their right so we get the duration I'm never various military missions or parties of the events scrutiny by the like the 55,000 troops in the event on getting different work and after 200 year rock there's no catch all let me say that land was wars wanting one real thing clear should do not that I use first part of action has been a force for peace real empathy for MS wars understood and also making B change one cause of referendum on the hypothetical consequences of plan to defend us to or any other interpretation should the goals away from resolution of text but they just use that government want to see any link would lead to them putting the plan there must be an all that call solves their constant inclusion of plans including at some two always prevents the pathway tension 3 from people to ideal could open the link or fails 4 no link plan increase in battle production and by the military 5 all fails causes transition wars and battle degradations for the team. Dismantling an entire academic system with transforming tongues so good and very limited on possibilities of the union and every region becoming later about federation capitals US to per capita mission 6 hours assaulting environment with plus 31 hammer 20 hours in about 30 innovation increasing quality of life social and contagion by educating weekend inclusion only about and with society so consuming like the regulation college and what you go property can go so all these capitals and solving 17. Market economies have an interest in the workplace. Wars not possible. Line natural line protect the global order. Minor power band from murdering powers. Common permanent world peace. Conditional order for fairness under and education strategy times the app and its that doesn't fashion and research only strategies and returns or series thoughts the counter of the adventure plan. 1. Perm do both. 2. Perm do the counterplan. 3. Perm do the plan and any combination of plans. 4. Nuke extrapolation. The block should be reduction just device. 3. 1 ARs. Funding the military doesn't do anything. They already have unlimited budget and the counterplans versus in the future like 15. Like the usual supervision outside military and private government motivated by national security goals and check with the private protection and restriction to reverse policy reversals either when closer and and informal like regulation that receive other military for without register military government best of durable when rules subject to which is the first plan terms violations because advantage to whenever one the like that are supposed to solve for any issue, no playing, solve special ops that unique impact that they don't solve any, and if you LW doesn't solve that means that it's about buttons and competence empowering rogue actors or by responding to troops or the other side meaning as the last 3 planks of rogue out or people for the after solve. The secrets dissat. 1. The dissat is about FISA court. There's 0 link between those in the app. 2. No link. The president can easily certify FISA restrictions. 17. Even restrictions that are not safe can lawfully keep operating wireless surveillance even if Congress fails to authorize it. Executive branch law others could lawfully continue to justify once a year. The FIAC authorizes to operate for 12 months. Or the signifies an amendment tax aid. Or does issue child continue to require the date of expiration fee even if we want to even if they want to require link about requiring the military to disclose info in courts. What redefined natural emergencies requires that for a use dissat today special. That 5. The assault the anti-special fuel terrorist when it comes to extra response and head solves the 6 terrorism is an existential 116. It's reference of threatening our way of life, terrorism, government mysteries about the world, about the normal less than false even union state small scale attacks, and giving an order to complicated operations done like the level of mental and bone, so things that's threat for politics. 1. Perm do both, not mutually exclusive. 2. Perm to the complaint. 3. There recusing yourself doesn't know time. 6. 3. FS. It's a tie. 4. Individual justice. Fiat is voter effective. Mindset. Fiat that lets neg. Fiat a very impact by cheating and go after actors and it's regressive. And 5. Predicting God's Jesus. Step 22. That's what we're doing about dog because I guess it's all nine. I guess it's all nine. Practice the brother. Breakdown. Coming out from the family. Can see these things. They did make predictions. Justice. Trading. With video shot. And suppose and boss office. Call. Well, not on the no, right this video we not because they're on with prediction will not would write you, but if you want to predict I'm predicting court, we'll go with sort of oral arguments prove how 21. Consider actors court just the same time I'm getting roll argue that or there's no written abortion or something entertaining the idea of person last time people we're in an afterthought and not a priority just question or we're going to preview pushing or decide claims try to send out some abortion they've already decided or arguments were in separate and it's for recommended 87 also about capital matter because we are really so capital transferable from one area to another and negative reaction to our growth by issued by about SOP market part after SOP and the corporal switch in EPA West Virginia instead of the environmental case and tons of the blockbusters on the cases on board we're going to work switch on market as an analytic and let's see this in the real research military readiness and no impact. Yeah.
On case in response to circumvention, you said the act would result in peacetime all the time. What does that mean?
Wait, sorry, did I say that?
In response to circumvention arguments, you said the act would result in peacetime all the time. What does that mean?
Oh, was this in response to like the
circumvention
on
what is peacetime all the time mean?
Yeah, I maybe misspoke. What I meant is that the AF defines peacetime. The entire point of the second advantage is that we redefine what it looks like
for the president to sort of declare, to sort of use national security and to broadly enable executive flexibility and special.
So what's
laws.
peacetime?
Peacetime is when Congress is times other than when Congress declares a war.
Okay, and the act would change military exemptions when we're not in war?
We would force the military to comply to regulations.
And is war like a formal declaration of war? Like
The
what
whole
war-
point of Second Advantage is that right now there's no good definition of peacetime, and so the Stein evidence, I think, is the one that.
Yeah, I'm just asking, what is the definition? Is it like when we're not in a formal declaration of war? Is it like no interventions? What does that mean?
We think that it's a formal declaration by Congress.
The Stein card is where judges should look at their case.
Case, you said the impact is not accidents. What's the scenario where Biden lashes out?
I explained this on sort of,
Like, is he preemptively striking?
so it's about special operations, sort of triggering a adversarial response by other countries. We think that Biden
Okay.
is kind of,
And then you respond to that.
yeah, we think it's sort of an escalation scenario where Biden does a bunch of ridiculous foreign policy because he's incapable of making the correct calculation. That's the means evidence, which
That makes
escalates to
sense.
global war.
Secrets disad, the savage card you read is like describing how right now the NSA can do whatever they want. They can continue to spy. No one's checking them. Why is this responsive?
Because it talks about how it's like a blatant violation of sort of the ruling of FISA and the Foreign Intelligence Service.
But this is describing the status quo. It says that they can do those operations now without being fettered. You've read like a scenario about the act causing judicial review of those actions. Why is this a no argument?
Right. It talks about how the Trump administration broadly expanded the NSA's authority, disregarding things like FISA.
Okay, that's not the act. The act does not expand NSA's authority. You like read a scenario where you decrease its authority because you check the user
Right.
example.
This is not. The point of this card is not to be like this is what the app is. The point is that it's an answer to a disapp and saying that FISA.
Like this seems like linking against me. In what world is this app?
We think that this card is saying that FISA is generally weak. It doesn't have to be specific to the app.
Eight. 4:30. We know we're good for order.
Good for order, but on the document.
It's the democracy bad impact turn. I'm bringing it to the top.
So advantage two.
Advantage two, but just
So deference?
yeah, sorry, but just the impact turn and then defense will be at the bottom.
So you can go back to
yeah,
that circumvention
I'll-
thing then?
I'll be clear about
Okay.
it. So first, advantage two with the impact turn. Then I'm answering condo on the K, I guess. The advantage counterclaim. The kick. Then advantage one. Advantage two.
Circumvention, then at the accidental launch defense.
Yeah, like circumvention, defense to like PFAS, agriculture, stuff like that.
Sure.
Yeah.
I just got the docs.
Sweet.
Oh, can we?
It's like shot.
Minus.
Maybe they don't, it's called.
Hey, can y'all sit down
Should we just keep that possible?
I'll be last.
There's a lot of kids out there.
Okay. Anyone not ready? Cool.
Revisionism outweighs hostile declining powers threaten international peace status. Denial removes the incentive for revisionists to rise peaceably, which triggers destabilizing territorial aggression and arms racing. Air neg analysis of revisionist powers gets it wrong by presuming they're dangerous when the power is growing. That's terminal impact defense. All the scenarios. That's brands. The perception of declining powers will keep relations peaceful. China, Russia only aggressive. Challenge Risser. 17 of the U.S. is beginning to establish the foundation of how Russia right now will striking later improves the odds of every day the hegemon soft to prevent more patients of virtue for adversity crisis rest to America around Americans around the flag. The U.S. retains formidable risks. The lasting every rival wants to renew American spokes. The U.S. can take its current direction. Their future conflicts more promptly and current American rival might prefer acting now later to act later act acting now. I forgot Payton. Read the brand's cards. I'm gonna read that now. It's in the 1 and C. Revisionist states are only dangerous when they've just had their ambitions denied. The plan creates the only scenario for great power. Brands 18 of the country's position to proving why we're showed on one eye. Surpass the hegemon of the shopping private national reverse power gaining influences believers cultivate national versus reward of the global change in the country's peaks far such shift in favorable ways. The role of the iron seems the only chance of the plan's will. Not a rising power that makes revisions dangerous with the temptation to act before decline sets in. Only our offense liberal revision state will never fully integrate challenge and then now only exacerbates conflict. Land 19. There are times to expect the taste on one China modernizing military and very strategic strategies with the order on the back foot. Liberal countries can never be sure inside of the changes approach makes it impossible to have any order the U.S. level liberal. They have no interest in democracy. Illiberal state enough to integrate and system effective way for reverse use to accept leadership exacerbate problems. The ability of the U.S. to save the order will tell period how to have the cost of maintaining the order will only increase domestic political pressure. Abandon it altogether. The uniqueness argument that culminated of the 2AC is our uniqueness argument. Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the U.S. now escalating all proves that we won't be aggressive towards Ukraine, towards Russia and China right now. Their alliance also proves that. Restoring U.S. North promoting democracy, the death knell for stability, investing in the liberal order with new U.S.-led life disturbing powers, carefully calibrated strategy like Russia's invasion of Ukraine that throws a new threat of U.S. blocking status progression into their capitalists. They'll respond to U.S. alliance and hedge aggressively to obtain status democracy, causes Nigerian state collapse and civil war. 19. Nigeria spent Second of elections, 2.5% of budget for infrastructure and adequate requiring investments, cost of democracy, increasing threats to deliver a good social cost of greater stability in elections, brought violence, spread the national fabric, when fissures, faith and results of self-help, the state's collapse, energy use, power, overarching instability, combat, instability, Nigerian instability, escalates to grow globally, power array, 21, Africa matters, they have a devastating impact globally because input of the Congo, force region to be origin of the next pandemic, experience and terror from the types of spread Nigeria, will have 1 billion terrorist groups such as Boko Haram, Nigeria, power competition, will be a factor, Russia's increasing presence, aftermath, happens throughout the world. They say all the stats, they don't matter because you have specific scenario that doesn't, the empirics don't matter because even if Russia and China were less aggressive, were more aggressive in the past, if they overtake the US now, they're going to want to lash out. But we have stats that are better. Mansfield 22. Countries go through rocket statistical evidence into that space. Countries become more war prone, not less safe by war. Stress likely is to talk to his peace and long run provides little comfort to those who face a heightened risk of war in the short term. Pushing nuclear powers like Russia and China democratization is spinning a roulette wheel. Democratic peace here is cherry picked and down. Continue to democracy is the best ruins plate. 19. The book relies on different types. Supports peace. We do not find a correlation to dynamic level. Evidence in pneumatic levels includes the answers, articles, check conflict severity. Determinants seem quite different. Not much evidence democracy is more peaceful in general. While other factors include democracy is even more severe. Studies only both have high development. Forced democracies are more likely to fight. So the word is explained by continuity, alliance, economy, just democracy. No studies down the K. We get economy read. One is like flex topics no longer of inherent controversies or interpretations that limit the topic, but counterplans as functional limits exacerbated by a natural instead of take back the best offensive choice. Their interpretation subsets the outcomes untenable for them. Negative status quo. 2 is reasonability. The status quo should always be a logical option. Arbitrary and unpredictable rules are worse than no rules. Punishment should fit the crime. Make the counterplans dispo. Defense. 1 is diminishing marginal utility, adding more advocacies, peaks in value until their strategic liabilities. 2 skew and contradictions are inevitable. T just has to be highlighting framework pace. Dispo sucks. 1 can be consensus. 2 the 2AC ditches block it's functionally caught across counterplans and add blank force firms. 4 the straight shooter's best answer. The 2AC will always read it. 5 Condo turns research. 4 creativity find the needle in the haystack when you see that. B generic. C advanced counterplan kick it. No going for it. Firms or just test competition theories out of reason driven team. The pick. It picks out during peacetime complaint. Brooks says codifying peacetime is a legal requirement, reifies militarism and national security efforts. It creates meaningless dichotomies. Gates says continue militarism with global scale affirmatives. Descriptions authorize a total war against alterity. Every spot of the map becomes a potential flashpoint for conflict, causing apocalypse from now on. This impact is inclusive. The one is the impact is larger in scope. Our argument is only about the discourse of the round, but rather about how the plan is implemented. But even if we lose that impact, you can still vote on the discourse that they read. It's an independent reason. They reject the team. 1AC Smith groups are points as the exemptions only be restricted to peacetime and military can keep up its preparedness for combat, despite how much they want to tell you. The act does not include any mandate that clarifies definition of the word peacetime, so don't let them leverage any offense off of that mechanism. The act understanding the war is an event mass everyday violence during peacetime and reinforced militarism. Women 96 wars out of defense versus present viewers on notice that officers militarism the kind of dress affects military people, military institutions, the environment, practices, gender, national debt, just for destruction of communities during peacetime, like potential not accommodate the connection among militarism, person that not attend to practice depressed-based politics, strategy, and domination, history, potentially keeps resistance complex and moving away who take more nuanced resistance. Do both includes the modification during peacetime, which obviously links to our offense. Do the counterplan to severance. 1 textually during peacetime is removed. 2 functionally removing the during peacetime text actually changes how the policy is implemented by making it broader. That's Brooks and Thomas 21. Deleting word space superversion. City changes time removed. Unleash dogs. No dogs. Nobody perceived that unleash your dogs are allowed. Severance is a voting issue. For fairness, the counterplan still solves even if it doesn't include the peacetime restriction to limit the exemptions the military uses during peacetime without clarifying in law or statutorily using the word peacetime or interprets that we should be able to pick out of any word in the plan, provided the following counterplan competes functionally and textually solves offense because it deletes trivial options like the VPEC. 1 is education specifically solves the advocates, eliminating the difference between plan and counterplan for the college and qualitative debates. 2 is negation theory. The rules non-resolutional arbitrary. Yes, now benefit or interprets that all the words in the plan must at least be included in the law's text. Most predictable broad like flies on a bad topic. The renaming fails cards not responsive. The counterplan isn't just a semantic change with no functional fetch. The conditions of which the exemption can be applied. Yes, endless words empirically proved. That was the Smith part above. Now binge 1. I guess I'll skip circumvention. PFAS scenarios are fake. You should have a high bar for any new one-error answers to PFAS because the 2AC responses were unwarranted and literal buzzwords. 1 there's no impact PFAS harbor says spermageddon is exaggerated. Research problematic sperm count doesn't correlate with health or probability of conception. That's hardy too. The app can't regulate PFAS says the EPA doesn't have currently existing limitations with PFAS because the app only eliminates exemptions. It cannot create new regulations. 3rd, it's all causes tape, wax, gear, purchase, textiles all use PFAS. Some other evidence says the military is key. It says the military is a big contributor, but doesn't say that reversing military pollution would automatically solve agriculture. But the ag scenario is brain dead. 1, contamination is not collapsing. Closest the internal link cards that gets to an internal link is the line which says contamination trickles out through the food supply. That's been happening for decades without consequences. 2 is numbers, COVID, conflict, climate, and conflict lock-in, long-term food insecurity. 3rd, no food wars impacts some of the best research and basic reasoning. War is costly. There's no correlation. Even if local skirmishes rise, great powers don't join the fray. That's Salahan. War is export locations. This is drugs. America only supplies 9.5% of agricultural supply. Most produce wealthy countries won't go to war. Empirics don't prove those were global food prices that were only correlation, not not causation. The U.S. only makes up 2% of the imports of undernourished countries to the most vulnerable. Now, the innovation scenario, there's no risk. For instance, the DoD has been increasing its pursuit of alternative energy net zero installations, and the Navy produces a quarter of energy renewables, which is only increasing. There's no impact hedge. Even complete collapse would stay limited, but their scenario would never reach collapse. Trade and law provide incentives against territorial expansion, and there's no spillover. Card 0 that eliminating exemptions over water spills over to environmental exemptions broadly. A is oil use is another exemption. Orton 21, the military is wanting to go green while increasing oil by 25% annually. Peacefully exemptions Orton 21, officially live in the base and not applied to through much of the exemption occurs. And there's no water wars. It's cooperation. Every conflict is being de-escalated because of high cost and treaties for D'Angelo, valuing every empiric. B text policy Alonso 18, new tech will increase fresh water availability, water use, especially reducing conflict, desalinization, improve drinking water stability. Now, advantage to the defense stuff. Obviously, all the democracy defense applies. The special ops scenario does not include highlighting of who will attack and when. For a specific scenario, the impact turn, the decide that you can predict, the entirety of the impact turn is also offense against scenario checking. Arrivals is bad. There's also no terminal impact of the special ops scenario that gets to anything close to a real warrant. We'll take the second throw.
That was 4 seconds.
So 426.
And like the last card you read was this other Dell I was looking at.
Yes.
Sorry, 426?
Yeah.
Okay.
You give it a sex.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, I'd like to talk about your democracy scenario.
Yeah.
So you talked about how Ukraine is uniqueness for you.
Mhm.
Russia is expanding into Ukraine.
That's exactly the point. Like, the point is that Russia and China are going to achieve global, like, democratic and export their authoritarian norms now. The expansion into Ukraine is exactly the point. But the point is that it won't escalate now because the U.S. isn't challenging Ukraine. Economic sanctions are not like an empiric that matters at all because we haven't.
You are endorsing a world in which Russia and China feel emboldened to take over wherever they please.
Not necessarily. It would be a world where their norms are promoted. Basically, the reason they're invading into Ukraine, what the Lind and the Brand's evidence would say, is that they want to export their authoritarian norms. But obviously, they wouldn't just like expand into NATO or like try to invade.
Why not?
Because they would actually get militarily attacked. And the point is that the advantage would increase
But isn't
the military.
Isn't the point that we're not going to militarily attack them?
In the status quo, yes. But
Right.
Unless they invade NATO. So like expansion and authoritarian norm promotion into Ukraine will not result in escalation between the US and Russia.
Okay.
But
so-
if they attack
so
someone
Russia
that's
and
protected
China
by
can invade
NATO,
literally anywhere that's not NATO. Is what
like
I'm saying.
anywhere where there aren't defense commitments, I guess.
Where are their defense commitments?
Well,
And
they
why
obviously
would those
still
be
have a
pursued
rational
by Russia and China
calculation.
When we don't check them with those defense commitments.
That doesn't make any sense. Like Ukraine is not protected by any US defense commitments, so any empirics or any evidence that goes to speak about Ukraine is not relevant to
Sorry.
how.
They're not going to expand in NATO now, right?
Yes.
That does not mean there's no deterrent. There's
No, it's not about territorial expansion. It's about norm promotion. Russia and China feel that they can export authoritarianism in the status quo. Not necessarily that they like take over the entire world and become like military
I'm
hegemons.
not really understanding the breakdown between where they invade and where they don't.
I don't think the importance of military invasion is necessarily that relevant. It's more about how they feel about how they can increase their authoritarian norms.
Okay, sure. The head, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm understanding this as just like the word peacetime sort of blurs the line between like military
Yes.
and non-military. And
Not military and non-military. The word peacetime blurs the line between war and peace. But the fact is that war is ongoing. Only 95%, only
and
5%
so,
of.
to be clear, the removal of the word peacetime is supposed to solve endless militarism on a global scale.
Well, it's a net benefit to the plan. Like we would codify the app would codify peacetime as a legal requirement, which increases as the second advantage says.
Why the word peacetime sort of maybe blurs the line between war and peace. Why does that actively increase?
That's the
militarism?
entire point of the second advantage. That's what all of Cross-X was. The Cross-X was like redefining peacetime and how national emergencies work would spill over to other issues.
And increasing militarism.
Because the word peacetime blurs that dichotomy between war and peace, which incentivizes military aggression.
Science, where is court politics?
Court politics week or court politics week?
Case managed to court politics, then secrets.
Okay.
Okay, cool.
On case, I'm gonna read the Taiwan stuff that's at the bottom of the two.
Okay, so
Advantage to
there's two
core
politics
politics.
secrets.
Anyone not ready?
No.
Okay. Anyone not ready?
No Taiwan invasion, Roy Taiwan, China's unlikely to war over Taiwan, host the Olympic Costa Olympics at the 23rd Conference Party Dimension. She saw war because war turmoil road issues, popularity action is risky leaders maintain no toughness and no intent to attack action. It's not Taiwan will not spend without fighting in China. It's not strong in war could cause dissent and backlash over the direct polarization. China's buying decoupling crisis in relation to give Asian cause now. The core politics decide concede the permutation just to test competition will also concede it's already decided and there's some person not going for the state secret decide it outweighs strong state secret darkness key to effective counter-terror operation. Terrorism will to the planet. Even risk pursuers become sugar happy, misconstruing terrorists for challenging states. This creates a chain reaction. Nuclear conflict, drawing every state with nuclear weapons and nuclear whatever cause atmospheric effects. Turns the world into a high house, which turns their warming and food scenarios. It also turns all their war scenarios by interventions being bad because we would do ineffective counter-terror operations, which would build end like things in Iraq, which would cause all their impacts. Bring to AC6 to the top. Yes, terror impact, even if limited flips nuclear terrorization. 18. Terror lead to inadvertent war, AWS and terror, accidental detonation of miscalca, nuclear terror precipitate to massive exchange, triggers nuclear war in every Asian and European hotspot, hasten 18 nuclear ignite trigger, interstate war leading to accidents and misinterpreted 5, nuclear accidents, the PRK, the Taiwan, Japan, and China, Russia combinations that culminate in nuclear war externally by terror causing extinction, whilst in 20 virus could spread a quarter killing anything that would even evade countermeasures that were introduced in, wipe off the planet attack could be difficult about tech producer, finding need to edit genes, authorities not able to buy weapons, even without attack, the heightened threats of terror breaks independently declassified classification, causes foreign crisis, turns all the war scenarios counter, 18 crisis increases information remain, classified security culmination reduction, suggested to counter the investigation involving sensitive methods, intelligence requires secrets to conduct operations, so 1-2 punch the rug responsible for effectiveness protection sources is jeopardizing security, breakability, adversaries to neutralize, and exploit methods to enhance the direct costs of use capabilities, willingness to exploit activities creates stabilizing unease, 2AC1, the DISAT is not about FISA courts, it's about judicial review broadly, undermining secret operations being conceived as spillover claim now explained below. That means that app would affect all these things. 2AC2, yes, link. The card they read is link uniqueness. It says that the NSA is currently able to carry out their warrantless surveillance programs without oversight from Congress. That was in cross-ex. Also, it's true of the courts too, how in 3-4 government invoke state security privileges and lawsuits against unlawful surveillance and narrow ruling of justice held that the FISA does not trump the state secrets privileges allows the government to withhold information does disclosing compromise national security court's opinion was the second in 2 days of dealing with state secrets. The link is massive exemptions allow the military to be exempt from environmental the regulations during peacetime and wartime. The act makes a spillover claim that the act would allow more judicial review in other areas so challenge the unitary executive like the war on terror. We've conceded this claim. This means that the NSA and DHS when trying to organize counter operations will be forced to disclose this information in the court when the judiciary is doing the review process. Our Croner evidence think back to when I see cross-ex or when I see Brown evidence says that the act would constrain interventions abroad which are key to counter operations as per when I see Croner evidence as an independent link judicial overreach dexed the entire regiment Croner 19 prompted by skirmishing of the shining lawsuits legislation would strengthen judicial scrutiny. The bill would be seen interfere with the constitutional rules in decades of case law that would result in harmful disclosure. The possibility of disruptions which will cause especially grave damages such as security remains one decision away. Persistence litigation makes it likely appeals are coming to keep to find a judge. It only takes one is troubling. The legal process is an outcome uniquely fragile in terms of vulnerability and the inquiry could force disclosure granting the SOP's non-judicial ability is crucial. The plan opens feature sheets Croner and state secrets that permit the government's of our disclosure. If this should not be divulged or privatized in the broadcast rule of non-traceability where the secrets result in dismissal, Supreme Court will action copy maintain whether matters that are exposed to the determined of the courts and reaffirm the public policy forbids us to undermine the intelligent covert opposite in two vital aspects. Constitutional sense is essential to the honor of the SOP because secrecy is necessary to foreign affairs responsibility. Secrets about the courts avoid constitutional conflict. Now 2AC3 the app does spill over to disclosure. That's a judicial review link explained above because they have to
disclose that information, of course, for the courts to be able to review whether or not that action is constitutional. Spills over to 702 Authority Corner, 19 States of Maryland, Next 702. The courts conclude the claims could not be advanced adjudicated without grave damages. State secrets remains available when constitutional dimension and secrecy is essential to be effective. Uncertain privileges, no privilege at all. 2AC